Okay, in this video we're going to make a login system with Tkinter and SQL, the database in the back end, so that in a Python file you can log in and it'll store that username and password. And in fact, we'll have it so that it hides the password when we go in, right? So I'm just going to put my name. It's May 2026. And let's start with, we might as well put a title about what it is. It's going to be a simple login system with Tkinter and SQL Lite, right? So now, if we're going to use Tkinter and we're going to use SQL Lite, we're going to import those libraries. So we're going to import Tkinter as TK. That's easy. Let's do from Tkinter import message box. Now that'll make it so that we can have pop-up messages come up on the screen. Let's import SQL SQLite 3, and let's import this thing called OS. Now OS is going to be used to check to see whether the stuff is in the database. We're going to actually use it to see whether it's in the database, right? So let's start off with making a database. Now the reason we're making a database is the database is somewhere to store the username and the password, right? So that's why we're making a database. That's why we're using a database as a back end, right? And let's call this users, because that's what it's going to store. It's going to store the user's information, right? Users database. Okay. Now, the first thing we want to do is check to see whether the database is there, right? So this is why we're looking at the OS and we're saying use the OS's path, see if this exists. So this checks to see whether the database already exists. And we know that the database, we've called it database name in our variable. So we want to put that in there, right? Which actually looks for a file called user.db, right? So it's going to look for that to see whether that exists. And if it exists, let's give a printout statement that says database already exists, right? Now, let's do what happens if it doesn't exist, right? So that's our if statement. So let's give it an else. And our else statement, we're going to say print database not found, and then let's actually make the database, I suppose. So let's go database not found. Let's do another print statement, and let's say creating a new database. Oops. Creating a new database, ... Okay, let's get rid of that line in there. So this OS goes to our operating system. It uses a path, it searches through the paths and tries to find to see whether database name exists. And here, database name refers to this file. Is there a file called user.db? If there is, it says yes, it already exists. Otherwise it says no, there's not a file, let's create one. Now it says it's going to create one, but we haven't actually created one. It's just sort of saying that, yeah, we're going to create one, right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to make a connection to the database if there is one, right? So let's do that. Let's say connection equals SQLite 3. So we're using the SQLite 3 library that we've imported. We're going to make a variable called connection, and it's going to connect to whatever we call the database. And we call this userdb. It's in our database name here. So we're saying use SQL3 to connect to the database. That's what we're going to say, right? And then we're going to say cursor equals connection.cursor. Right, now that line lets us run SQL commands on the database. In other words, it gives us a cursor on the database to actually make different commands, right? So that's what this line does, this one line does. Now, let's see if the table exists, right? So we've set up here that, yeah, it already exists, but let's actually check with the SQL to see whether it already exists. So let's use our cursor that we've just set up, right? So we're going to have our cursor, and we're going to get it to execute a command. And the command we're going to get it to execute is a line of actual SQL code. And we're going to say create. Notice I'm doing this in capital letters. create table if not exists. And we want the table to be called users. Now, what I want you to notice here, right? We're saying if the table doesn't exist, we're going to create the table. If the table already exists, you can't create it, which kind of solves these two problems here. If it already exists, we don't need to create a new one. If it doesn't exist, we're going to use this line to create it. So we're going to create this. Now, if we create it, we want it to have an ID, which is an integer, which is a primary key, and we want it to auto increment. Right now, if you haven't done databases in class yet, I'm talking about the year 10 students, you don't need to worry too much about this. If you're a year 12 student, we've done databases, you know this is going to be the primary key that has an auto incrementing integer as for the ID. The year 10 students, we will get to this, all right? We'll get to this shortly. Okay, we're creating a field called username, and we're allowed to put text in there, and we're going to create one called password, and we're going to allow text to be put into there as well. Let's close that bracket. Let's close those three inverted commas, close that, because we're executing this function here, and then the SQL code goes inside that, right? So that's how we would write that. Now this is going to say, I'll just reiterate what this is doing. This is going to create a table if there's not a table there called users. If there is a table there, it won't do anything. But if there's not a table there, it's going to create one called users. It'll have three sections. It'll have an ID, a username, and a password. The ID will be a number that goes up automatically, like an ID, like your ID card or your tax file number, something like that. You can enter a username and you can enter a password. That's what that's going to do. Now, we want to make sure that that is done. We want to make sure that that connection is committed. So we do commit statement, right? And so that commits that. That means not only are you going to go and check it, you actually have to make the changes. We're forcing it to make the changes, right? And once it's done that, we can say that the database is ready. Let's just put database ready. Okay, so we know the database is ready. So we get that output saying we've created the database, it's sitting there, it's ready to go. Now, let's talk about what we want to do. We want to have a GUI that has some input boxes and some buttons. And the GUI that has the input box and the buttons, it's going to have an input for a username, an input for a password, and then two buttons. One of them could be register as a user, and the other one could be log in as a user. Okay, so we might write that section first. We're going to have to come back and put some functions in here that make these sections and these things work. So I'm just going to put a little note in here. I'm going to say function section. Okay, so we can go back later and we can add some functions into this function section. So, but before I do that, because I kind of want to know what it's going to feel and look like, I'm going to making the GUI first in here, right? So, like I said, I'm going to come back to this section here, but at the moment, I'm going to make the GUI. Now, when we've been making GUIs in class, you guys have all done these, year 10 and year 12. We're just going to start with window, Tkinter, K, brackets, make sure you get the capitals and everything right, and that's going to make us a window that pops up onto the screen. Now, on that window, we want to have a title, and let's put in brackets in here. Let's call our title a login system. Okay, so we've got a title. Now we want to set the size, so we always do window dot geometry. And we need to do a size in there. And I made this mistake in one of my previous videos, so I won't make the mistake again. I'm learning from my mistake. A small x, not a capital X, all right? So a small x, and that's the size, right? So this is our GUI size. It can be changed, right? So you want to change your GUI size, you just go and change those 350 to 250. Okay, so that's the first bit. Now, what else do I want? On my GUI, I'm going to want a title. I'm going to want a username. I'm going to want a password. So I'm putting these comments in here just so that I remember the things that I want. I'm going to want 2 buttons, a register, and I'm going to want a login. Okay, so I'm just putting those titles there so I remember each section that I want to do in my file, right? So let's start off with a title. Now, title's pretty easy. Let's call this a title underscore label. Now, what I've written there, title label, that is the variable name. When you get to actually doing the title, you have to remember to put a capital B on the word label, otherwise this won't work. Really, really common mistake that students make is they forget this capital L right there. It has to be a capital L. Okay, now where do we want this label to be? We want it to be in the window. We want it to have text in it, and we want the text to equal simple login system. So that's going to be what's written on the actual GUI. You'll see the word simple login system, and let's use a really easy font. Let's use just Arial, and let's make it kind of big, so we'll make it 18 point, and that's the end of our little title box. Now we need to put that on the screen. So to put that on the screen, we pack it, right? So title underscore label, lowercase. In that situation, we're going to go dot pack, and we'll put 2 brackets around it. Let's put some padding from the top of the screen. So let's go pad Y, which is the Y axis, by 10. So it's not going to be touching the top of the screen. It'll be down by 10 pixels. Okay. So there's our title. So we've done that. Now let's go down and do our username section. Okay. Now our username section, we're going to do. We might as well do a label to start with as well. So let's just do this. Let's highlight that, copy that, and paste that here. Now, this time we don't want to call it a title label. We want to call it, let's call it username label. Username label. All right, so we're going to call it username label. We're going to put it on a window. The text is going to say username. Colon, and then do I want a space? No, let's just do that. Username like that. We don't need any of this font and thing. It'll just use the default. Let's just delete that. Right. And then let's pack that. Let's call it username. So packing means putting it on the screen. Essentially, all I'm doing is saying, okay, put that word username on the screen. I don't need any padding for this, and maybe I'll pad Y later, but for right now I don't need that. Now that's going to give us the word username, but we actually need a box for that to go into. We need to have a box where the username can be put into it, right? So let's create a new variable here. Let's call this user entry. So it's going to be our username entry box. In fact, I should probably call it username entry. I should be consistent, right? So we'll call this username entry, and it's going to equal a Tkinter function called entry. Okay, so you can see here kind of how this is working. Label creates labels on our page. Entry creates, guess what? Entries on our page, entry windows. Now, where do we want this to be? We want it to be on the main window, and we want it to have text. Oh no, we don't need to have text. We've already got text in the label above. We want it to be how wide? Width equals, let's just say 30. So that's it. So we're going to have an entry box that's going to be a width of 30 characters wide, that it can be our entry box. Okay, and then we want to pack that. So let's go username underscore entry dot pack. And let's pad this down from the actual word username, but we don't want to pad it too far, so let's just go pad Y equals 105. That'll do. Right, so that should give us the word username within the box underneath it. Now, we probably should do, well, we should do pretty much exactly the same thing with the password. Right, so if I can do this with the password, let's see if I can just copy all of that, Command C, just remove one of those spaces, go to here and go Command V. Now, it can't be a password, it's got to be password label. Okay, password label. And instead of saying the word username, we're going to have the word password. Okay, so that was pretty simple. And then we want to pack the correct thing. We don't want to pack username again. We want to pack password. Password label, good. Right now we want to have password entry. This is why I made sure that I wrote them correctly, because when you create a lot of these little variables, you want to have sort of a degree of consistency to it. An entry box. Now I'm going to make one thing different for this entry box. For this entry box here, no matter what they type, we want it to show stars. Now this is pretty important. So the user types in their password, you're not going to see their password. What you're going to see is a star every time they enter something. And that's pretty important, right? Because you don't want to give away the user's password if someone's looking over their shoulder or something like that. So that's going to give us a little star every time they enter. And now we've got our second entry box done, right? Now we want to have two buttons. So same thing, if I can design a good button the first time, then I'll just copy it for the second button, right? So let's call this one register_button. And I'll give you a guess of how we do it. tk.BUCCON button, right? So it's really the same thing using Tkinter. It's a pretty easy setup. Where are we going to place it? We're going to place it in the window, and we want the text on the actual button itself to say login. Put a comma at the end of it so we can put more in there. Right, then we want the width of our button. Let's have it at 15. Or you can change all of these variables, right? I'm just making it simple so that we can just make a button simply. Now, here's the difference. With the button, I want it to actually do something, right? I want it to actually run a function. So this one I'm going to give a command, and I'm going to call it login. Now, this is important. Because we're making a command here and we're going to say login, we actually need to go back up into our function section here, and we're going to have to define login, right? So that's going to say to me, you're going to have a function there that's called login, right? So I'm setting myself up for later for when we're going to actually do a login, and then there'll be information in here about what the login function actually is. So this button, it does something, it does login. And then in actual fact, when we get to the register button, which I'm about to do now, I'm just going to copy and paste, not the login button, the register, sorry, so that's wrong. That should be register, because I'm doing the register button. Okay. When we get to the login button, which is going to be down here, you're going to have a login function. And when we get to the register, we need a register function. So let's go back up here to my functions. Let's define another one here. Okay, so I messed that up a little bit, but I hope you understand what I mean there. When you have a command, so our register button has a command of run the register function, and our login button has the command of run the login function. You need to have the functions made, okay? Now, this one then needs to be called login button. Okay, so both of our buttons should be working now. They should be set up. This one has the word register on it. This one has the word login on it. Now, we didn't pack either of those, which means I didn't put either of those on the screen. So let's put them on the screen. Register_button.pack, and let's give it some padding. Pad the y-axis by 10 pixels. That means it's going to be 10 pixels underneath the password entry thing. Right, and let's copy that, and let's put the login button underneath that. Okay, so let's change this to the login button pack, and we don't need to pack this one because the two buttons can be near each other. Okay, so now in our GUI start, we've got our GUI. It opens up in this size window. It has a title. It has a box for the username. It has the word username. It has a box for the username. It has the word password. Then it has a box for the person to enter their password. It then has two buttons, the register button, which will take us to a register function, and we have a login button, which will take us to a login function. Now, essentially what we want is if they click register, they're going to register as a new user. If they click login, then they're an existing user that's already there. Okay, now to finish the GUI, so that's about it for the GUI, and this will actually start our program, start the GUI. We would have window, dot main loop, and that actually essentially runs the window and keeps the window running. And the only other thing we probably want to do here is we probably want to close the connection to the database. Okay, and to close that connection to the database, guess what? We go connection dot close. There's a lot of logic here, right? A lot of simple. If you want to close something, you say go to the connection and close it, right? So it's pretty logical. Right, now let's get up to our functions, because these are going to be a little bit more interesting. Let's start off with the register function, right? So we're going to go to the register function. Now, it's important if we're doing a register function, we remember we're using the register button as the place where we're going to put some information, where we've clicked the button. We're using one called password entry, and we're using username entry, right? So the two entry boxes are where we're getting some information from. So I'm going to run, let's do the register one first, right? So if I want to register a new user, I'm going to need a username. And the username is going to equal to whatever the user put into the username entry box. So I go to here and I say the username equals whatever the user put into the entry box. And let's say get that information. That's that one. That was pretty simple, right? Now, we also want to get their password, and that's going to equal to whatever they put into the password entry box. And we're going to get that information. Okay, so there's 2 bits. We've got those 2 bits of information. Now, if we're going to register, let's check to see that they haven't left it blank. We want to make sure that they have actually put something in here. So let's go, if username, which is our new variable here, is exactly equal to nothing, or if password is exactly equal to nothing, so they haven't put in a username or they haven't put in a password, then let's have a pop-up box, a message box, which is why we included that library at the start, and let's show the error to the user, and the error is going to say error, if I spelt it right, comma, on the next line let's put please fill all boxes. So if we say all boxes, it doesn't really matter which one they miss. It'll just say, oh, please fill in all of the boxes. So that's like a checking mechanism to check that they've actually put in a username and a password in those boxes. They didn't just click the register button for no reason. And if that happens, let's return that on the screen, right? So return essentially means display that message on the screen, right? In this situation. Okay, now let's assume they have entered information in correctly. Then we want to connect to our database again. Now, we're already connected. See here, we've got a connection. We're in the connection in here, and we haven't closed that connection until we get down here. So I don't need to say connect again. All I need to say is let's execute another cursor command, right? So let's go to here and let's go cursor, cursor.execute. And we want to, I could have just copied and pasted this, but anyway. Okay, let's go to here. What we're going to do, we're going to execute a command, and the command we're going to do, and this is a standard SQL command, select everything from users. Okay, select everything from users where username equals, and let's put equals question mark. And because what we do is with that question mark, essentially we're saying we don't want to type a username in here because we're going to have lots of queries with lots of different usernames. So if we say a question mark, then what we can do is we can say, let's try the username that the user has put into that box that we've saved it in up here that we got from their entry box. So let's do that like that. So we got username. I think that's all we need. Yep. So I'll explain that again. If I wrote a query in here that said select everything from users where username equals, and I put the variable there straight away, and I wrote it in as a permanent thing, then it would always look for that username. But I don't want it to. I want it to use different usernames depending on which person goes in. So by putting the question mark, then I say, go and get the variable that's being used at this time, right? So the code can be used over and over again. Right, now, after we've done that query, we want to get the result. And the result to that query, we're going to say, use the cursor function, go into the database, collect it. And in fact, collect it is called fetch once, right? Fetch one. Go and fetch this information once for me, and then we can analyze that. And what we're going to do is we're going to say if the result, and what this means, if I say if the result, I'm saying if the result is true, right? If we go to here and this username is already on the database, so if it's true that it's already there, so if the result is already there, we want to send a message again. I'm going to just copy this message box section here. I'm just going to paste it here because I don't want to write it all out. And this time we're going to say error, the user name already exists. So, in other words, the user comes along, they type in their name, let's say they type in Nick as their name, and they click register, and the name Nick is already in the system. It's going to say, sorry, that user's already in this system. You can't use that name. You need to have a different name. So this checks to see if the user's already in the system. That's what this if does. In fact, that's what this whole query is about, to check to see if the user's in the system. Now, if they're not in the system, then we want to insert them into the system, right? We want to add them. So remember, this is a new user. We're registering a new user. So to add the new user, we could do a cursor.execute, and we're going to execute another SQL command. And again, I should have just copied and pasted, but it doesn't matter. 1, 2, 3. Oops, I did one too many. Right, there we go. So this time we're going to execute another SQL command, and we're going to say insert into, and the table, we know our table is called users. And what do we want to insert into it? We want to insert the user name, and we want to insert into it the password. Now, again, I want to go and get these variables from somewhere. So let's go the values. And the values that I want to insert, let's put in 2 question marks. Okay, and then after these inverted commas here, I want to put a comma, brackets, and I want to insert the new username and the password. Okay, so I'm inserting the new username and the password, 2 brackets to close it, and then I want to make sure that that actually all works. So I'm going to say connection.commit. Okay, so I'll go through this whole register thing first. The first little section of register goes and gets the username that the user typed in. The password gets the password that the user typed in. It checks to make sure that neither of them are blank, right? That they've actually entered something. It also then goes and checks to see whether that username has been used on the server before. It doesn't matter whether the password's been used before. If the user's name's been used before, we can't use it, right? So it goes and checks that. And if it has been used, it says error, the username's already there. If it hasn't been used, we go down here and we insert it as a new user with a new password, and it gets those 2 variables. It uses the information the person has put in. So that's going to make our connection work, right? That's going to make our input of new user work. Now, if that works, let's put a message on the screen, the message box, and this time instead of it being error, let's put success. Success, user registered. Okay, so now if it actually all worked, then we're going to say success, we've registered a new user. Now the last thing I want to do here is I want to blank out the 2 boxes. I want the 2 boxes that the users just typed their username and their password in. I want them clear. I don't want anything in them, right? So I'm going to get this username entry box here. I'm going to say go to the username entry box and delete anything that's in it. And let's go from the start of that box right to the end of that box, right? So I want you to delete anything that's in that user entry name box, right? And let's do the same for the password. because you don't want to see someone else's leftover username and password and then you just steal their information. So you've got to make sure that you clear those boxes. So we've cleared those two boxes. So that's it for the creating a new user, registering a new user. Now we've got our user created. What happens if they want to log in? So we're going to create this function here saying, okay, I want to log in. I want to use this information. Now again, we'll have to use the user entry box and we'll have to use the get function. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy those two, Command C. I'm going to paste them here because we need to get both of those things. We need to get the username, we need to get the password, and we also need to connect to the server and check to see whether they're already there. So I'm going to actually copy this little connection here, this cursor connect, and I'm going to place it in here, but I'm going to change the SQL command. And this time I'm going to say, select from users, select everything from users, where the username equals question mark and the password equals question mark, right? And then down here, I'm going to say username, comma, password. Okay, so this time it's a little bit different. This time it's going onto the server. It's onto the database. It's checking whether the username is there, and it's checking if the password's there, and it's actually checking to see if they match what was entered into here. It's checking to see if they're the same, right? And that's what we're going to do. If the results are the same, what happens, okay? Now, we need to have this result fetch once, right? So we need to actually do that again up here. We need to get the result from the server, and then we're going to use this result variable to see if the person can log in or not, right? So let's go to here. And this is similar to the other one as well. If the result is true, the username and the password is in there, let's have a message box. So let's get this message box here and just copy and paste it. Command C, put it here, Command V, and we're going to say login, comma, login successful. So in other words, if the server went and checked the username and the password and the results showed that the username and the password are already on the database and you can log in, the results are going to show you, well done, log in, you can log in. That's a great message. And if that happens, we're going to actually make a new window open up. So let's go open main window. So we're going to create this new window. We're going to open up this new window. And that's actually going to be a function. And we're going to also, we better put in the username into that window. Now, if this is going to be a new function that we're going to run, that means I need to define that as a function as well. So I'm actually going to define that. Let's do that down here before our GUI starts. Let's go def. Okay, so we're defining the new function down here, and remember we want it to be called open main window username. So we're going to go down here and we go define our new function there, right? Now we'll get to that one shortly, right? We're not at that stage yet. We want to finish off our login one first, right? In fact, just put a colon there. Right, now let's go back up here to our main one. So if the login's correct and we've got this message saying successfully logged in, then we should get a new window open up. And that new window, we're going to send the username to that information. In fact, that needs to be indented in because inside this if statement, all right? So it needs to be entered in. Now, we also need to be, what happens if it didn't log in successful? They had a username, but they had the wrong password, or I don't know, they made a typing mistake or something like that. So we also need to have an else. So else they tried to log in and it didn't work. Then we're going to want to have a show message. And our show message, we want this one to say something like, in fact, show error. Oh, this one's not a show error. This one's a show info. Okay, this one's a show error, right? So this one will show what the error is, and the error here will be login, and we'll say something like incorrect username or password. So Now we don't know which one was incorrect. We're not doing that sort of a search on the database. But if it comes back with an error, we just show whatever the error is saying. Login, incorrect username or password. So we're not 100% sure which one was wrong. We could do that search if we wanted to, but we're not doing that in this. It's more complicated and we don't need to do it. So now we've got two functions. First function registers the user, second function logs in the user, and if it logs in successful, it goes to this open main window user. So we need to write this function. What's going to happen if we open the main window? Now, as it says, it's just another GUI window that we're going to open in here. It's just going to be a different window. So what I might do is I might copy these first three lines here, and I'm going to place them into here. I'm just going to hit return in there because there's one extra line that I might put in. Right, so in this new function, we're going to open a new window. But I don't really want to call it window because we're already using window down here. So I want to call this something different. So I'm going to call it main underscore window so that I know this is a different window. It's not the first login window. This could be the main window of our game or of our program of our whatever it is we're making. This is going to be our main window. Now, let's see what I want. Let's call this main program. That's going to be our main program. And let's make this window a bit bigger. It's a bit more important than the login window. So let's make it 500 by, I don't know, 300. Okay. Now, the only other thing that I just kind of want to do in here, and I want to make sure it happens in here, is I want to close that first window. So I want to close this window down here. I want to get rid of it, right? So I'm going to say the first window that we did, let's destroy that. So we're going to destroy that first window, which will get rid of it, and then we're going to open up this new one, right? And GUI size can be changed, that's fine. Now, what do we want to happen on this new main window? Well, let's put a welcome message in. Let's call it welcome underscore. Again, you should be able to do this by yourself now because we've done it before. Equals tk dot capital L label, and inside that label we're going to place it in the main underscore window, and then we're going to put a comma, put a couple of breaks in there. There we go. And we're going to have some text in it, and the text is going to say welcome to the main program. Now, oh, come on, to the main. Now, that's good. It would say welcome to the main program. In fact, let's just put in our same sort of heading sizes that we used before, our Arial 18. Let's grab that. Command C, let's put that in there as well. All right, so it's going to be the same font, same size. In fact, we could make this even bigger. This is our main window, so we could make this a bit bigger. That's good, but wouldn't it be better if we use this username that we grabbed in here and we put that into our welcome message? And we can do that really easily. If we put the letter F here at the start, and then we put in a set of curly brackets, and then we type in the name username, what that does is essentially this F goes and finds the variable that's inside the curly brackets. So it's going to go and find whatever that username is, and it's going to put it in there. So it'll say, welcome Nick to the program, or welcome Fred to the program, or welcome John, or whoever. It's going to find their name and say, welcome them to the program. Now we need to put that label on the screen, right? So we always do this, welcome underscore label dot pack. And let's move this down from the top of the screen a fair bit. So let's go pad Y, 30 pixels, 30 places. Now, we also need to run this window, right? So we need this main underscore window to loop. And we call it main loop. And the main loop is the same as we did down here, right? So right at the very bottom here, you'll see it says main loop down here. So this was running the one called window main loop. Now we're running the one called main window.main loop. I know that can be a bit confusing, but that's how it works. So that should be it. That should be our entire program. We should have a GUI pop up with boxes we can enter, and if we enter and get in correctly, it'll open a new window and say hello to us. Right, so that's kind of what we want to happen. So I'm just going to go File, I'm going to go Save As, and I'm going to call this on my desktop, I'll call this user GUI .py, and I'm going to hit save. Okay, and now I'm going to let's see, I'm going to run that file, which you can't see here. Oh, you know, run it from here. What am I doing? Run module. Now I've got a syntax error somewhere. And it's showing me that I've got a syntax error here, and the syntax error is actually that I haven't put a comma at the end. That's what I need to do. So hit save, run it again. Okay, I spelled cursor wrong, right? So, and it tells me line 23. So I can go here, I can go to my options, show line numbers, line number 23. I spelt cursor with a U instead of an O. So the errors are good. Errors help us find problems and fix them and learn from them. Right, there we go. Database already exists, so we've created the database. The database is ready. Okay, so great. We've created the database. We've created it. It's ready. Now, where's my GUI? Where's my little GUI? Oh, here it is. Here's my GUI window. Right, simple login system, username, password, that. Now, let's put a name in. Let's put in Fred, and we'll put in the password 12345, and let's register Fred. It says, okay, here's my pop-up window. It says user registered. Okay, great. And it cleared the 2 boxes, which is what I wanted them to do. Now let's log in as Fred. Fred, oops. And let's get the number wrong. 23456 instead of 12345. And I hit login, and it says, oh, incorrect username or password. That's my warning message. So let's try it again. Fred, 12345. And now I log in, and it says login successful. Okay. And something came out wrong. See, I got another error when my little window popped up. So I got a little main window here pop up, but there was an error. It tells me on line 49 or 42, one of those lines, I put TH instead of TK. So let's go and check that. Line 49 or line, what was it, line 49 or 92? Let's check them both. 49, that runs the function, so it wasn't, there's no error there. And then 92, down here, I've got TH label instead of TK. So let's save that. Let's run it again. Run module. Okay, here's my little pop-up window. I'm going to put in Fred. I don't need to re-register this time. I've already got him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I hit login. Login successful. And I got another error, right? So welcome label. I missed the word L on line 98. So little errors are upsetting me, right? So label right there, Command S, try again, run module. This trial and error, this is what happens. This is how programs get made, right? Fred 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, login successful, and here's my window that just popped up. Welcome Fred to the main program. So my new window here, and it's got his name in there. Now this is where, if you had the user log in, this is where you'd have your main program, your game or your app doing whatever it does. You've now got them logged in, you've got their username, and you can start to do something else in this window. So that's it. That's the end of the video. We've created a login system in Python using Tkinter that registers the user, and when they put their password in, you can't see what they're actually typing. That's the end. Good luck.